Have you ever been put on the spot and asked a difficult question that you've thought, I wasn't expecting that? Or you've been at a meeting and someone said, you've worked in that area, would you like to comment on that? Or that thrown in the deep end, you're expected to speak, make sense, you've got some knowledge. This is, of course, speaking off the cuff, impromptu speaking. So good morning, everyone. Peter Dew's my name, and I want to share some tips to help you be more confident and more effective when you're thrown in the deep end the next time, when you're asked to respond without time to prepare. It's called thinking and speaking off the cuff. Now, this is a one-day workshop, but I'm going to share with you some little models that will help underpin or be your safety net when you get that question. Now, fundamentally, my belief is most times we're asked to comment on something, to provide an answer, to give an opinion because we've got some knowledge in the area. It is very rare that we're asked to speak on something of which we know absolutely nothing. Very rare. It does occur in occasions. Sometimes you act up into a higher position, but generally my basis premise is we know something about the question we've been asked. We've got some knowledge or expertise and people are asking us to share, put another opinion on it, another shade of learning about what we know. So thinking and speaking off the cuff, here's some models that will help you be more effective and more confident. So impromptu speaking, thinking and speaking off the cuff, mastering that ability to think on your feet. That's what today's workshop is about. Now, I love to support you as much as I can, so please ask questions as we go. Any comments you have, by all means, feel free to add those comments. Any personal circumstances, feel free to take notes. And remember, I record this webinar, so the webinar recording will be available should you wish to review anything moving forward. So, impromptu, the importance of speaking off the cuff, the importance of impromptu speaking. First of all, it matters in your persona as a leader, as a professional. It puts you in a good position. Those people that always respond well, always can comment, have an answer, have some good advice, they're seen as leadership material. They're seen as worthy of promotion because you seem to be able to think on your feet and respond quickly. Common situations, job interviews, question and answer. If you appear in a court of law as a witness, you're going to be hammered. If you ever do media, radio, you're going to be asked questions. If you're on the phone answering phone calls from clients, they're going to ask you particular questions. Special occasions, wedding speeches, funerals, birthday parties, you may be asked to comment and say a few words. So there's a lot of areas where we speak without the need when we don't have time to prepare, when we don't have time to write a script. Those people who confidently speak on their feet, confidently speak off the cuff, confidently speak without notice, as I mentioned, they're just elevated in, wow, they're a go-to person. They're seen as a known authority. So the ability to think and speak on your feet, to respond, come up with ideas with little time to prepare is a valuable skill to have. And it's also seen as leadership potential. And I mentioned skill. So the good news is you may not be a natural, sharp, quick, on your feet thinker, but it's a skill that we can all learn. So let me share with you my 8 models, and it's a safety net that you can use when you're throwing that question. So these are the 8 models, and I'm going to go through them one by one. What you know from previous experience. Number 2, the PrEP method. I'll explain that. Past, present, future. So that's a time series. The advantages, the disadvantages. This is pros and cons. 3 things you know. How it affects you, how it affects others, how it affects the global aspect. Problem, cause, solution. And number 8, situation, action, outcome. So I'm going to spend the rest of this time going through each of those, giving you some examples. My aim, my hope is that you would master 3 or 4 of these. I don't think you're going to remember all 8, and they lend themselves for particular situations, and I'll explain that as we go as well. So the first one to have in your toolbox is what I know. And what I know is past experience. So when someone asks you to comment on something, what do you think about this? You can say, well, that's a good question. The last time we tried to do it that way, it didn't work out as planned and things went a little bit pear-shaped. So you're asking me whether I think that is a good idea. On past experience, I'd have to say no. So you're calling on your previous experience to give an informed opinion on what you've been asked. I saw this used once in New South Wales a few years back when someone said, the question was, what do you think about nuclear energy in Australia? And their response was, thanks, Peter, for the question. What do I think about nuclear energy? My personal opinion is that I do not support nuclear energy. What I know is that my next door neighbour, they immigrated from Ukraine 20 years ago, and they have family members die from leukemia and other radiation illness around Chernobyl every year. So they lose a family member, a friend, from leukemia or other radiation-associated illnesses today as a result of that nuclear disaster that we know about in Chernobyl. So on that basis, I would never want to support nuclear energy. So the answer is she does not support it. And the model she used, just understanding from speaking to a neighbour who had first-hand experience of the nuclear disaster. You may also notice that I often repeat the question, or that's an interesting question. And one of the things with off-the-cuff speaking is you don't have to utter the answer straight away. No, I don't support it. Yes, it's a good idea. Once you've said that, it's very hard to change, and the room may be a mixed audience, and you may want to just tone down your response a little bit. And also, if you don't know how you're going to answer, by repeating the question, you're giving yourself that space to think, to gather your thoughts. So what I know, it's a very simple model to use. It's based on your experience. It's based on past experience. The second model is called the PrEP method. Now, this is an acronym for state your point of view, give a little bit of a reason, explanation, and then restate your point of view. So if we ask that same question again of me, so Peter, what do you think of the future of nuclear energy here in Australia? That's a good question. And as you know, at the moment, they're struggling to generate electricity to guarantee continuity of supply. There's a big gap between when we're going to be fully available to use renewables and how we're going to generate electricity now. So my point of view is I don't support nuclear energy. Personally, I don't support it. The reason is I don't think it's safe. I think there's risks with nuclear energy. Let me explain. I mentioned Chernobyl already. That's going back 25 years. Even today, it's still a bit of a disaster area, and people have been affected health-wise. More recently, we've got Fukushima in Japan, that tsunami that rocked the nuclear reactor, and big nuclear disaster, big area that's highly radioactive, can't be used, into the oceans, So clearly they can't guarantee the safety of nuclear reactors. So as I said, my point of view, I do not support nuclear energy. So I'm stating my point of view, a little bit of a reason, explanation around Chernobyl and Fukushima, and then coming back and stating my point of view again, so you know that I do not support nuclear energy. That's a nice little framework. You need to know your point of view, and you need to give a little bit of a reason and explanation. And the most important thing with off-the-cuff speaking is, so therefore I do not support nuclear energy, is therefore summing up, is therefore nailing your position. So make sure you end strongly with what your recommendation, your advice, your point of view, your answer to the question is. The next one is past, present, future. And let me talk about maybe the National Disability Insurance Scheme, the NDIS, the Medicare for people with disability, the insurance scheme, the scheme that helps people with disabilities, children, adults, live their best lives. So Peter, what do you think about the National Disability Insurance Scheme? Okay, so thanks for your question. In the past, people with disabilities were presumed that they should not participate in society. Now, this is in my lifetime. They were put into institutions, they were frowned upon. If someone had a disability walking down the street, people would look at them, they would smirk at them. So institutions locked up high doses of lithium, phenytoin, keep them drugged up. That was the past life for someone with a severe intellectual disability. And that was in my lifetime. I went to those institutions as a medical scientist, taking blood samples. At the moment, we've had some great advances supporting people with disabilities, and we're seeing open employment. We're seeing people given the opportunity to live independently with some support structures in place. But if you have a disability at the moment, it is still a bit of a struggle to live the life that you deserve to live. You may find it hard to get work. People assume you can't live on your own. And so you end up in a shared home or staying at home or even a hospital, young people with disabilities living in hospitals. So in the future, what I'd like to see is enough structures and support so anyone born with a disability or acquiring a disability lives the life that they should, lives the life to the maximum of their ability, gets that opportunity to work if they can, gets that opportunity to live independently if they can, gets that opportunity to leave an institution, to leave home with the supports they need to live their best life. So the NDIS has still got a little bit of work to do to help people live the lives that they deserve, past, present, future. Nuclear energy, in the past, it was thought upon as our saviour. They were going to build a nuclear reactor in Victoria on French Island. At the moment, a lot of people are a little bit apprehensive. We've just had a federal election where nuclear energy was on the agenda. That party lost. But in the future, I don't know if it's 10, 15 years' time, as the rest of the world embraces nuclear energy and they can guarantee the safety and the waste product can be neutralised, the plutonium, not just buried in our backyard, I think that nuclear energy will come on the radar again in the future. But at the moment, I think many Australians are apprehensive, so I do not support nuclear energy. Past, present, future. Feel free to drop any comments, questions in the chat box. I'll keep an eye on that. Pros and cons. Model 4, this is advantages, disadvantages. This is the positives, the negatives. This is the risks, the rewards. And it's almost like the scales of justice. So you're being asked to comment on something and you're not sure. So you're now verbally unpacking it. So let's go back to nuclear energy. So Peter, what's your opinion of the future of nuclear energy here in Australia? That's an interesting question. Should Australia have nuclear energy? Well, the disadvantages of nuclear energy are that they cannot guarantee the safety of nuclear reactors. We can talk about Fukushima, we can talk about Chernobyl, and there's also an older disaster that occurred in the United States. So there is still risks involved with nuclear action. Another disadvantage is, what do you do with the waste product, the plutonium? Do you bury it in our backyard for our kids to worry about in thousands of years' time? And also that plutonium can get into dirty weapons, nuclear bombs. So there's a lot of risks with nuclear energy. The advantages are that Australia's got lots of uranium. It's here in our backyard. It's very high grade. It's rich. It's easy to extract. Another advantage is that nuclear energy is greenhouse gas friendly. So we can reduce our carbon footprint significantly, our CO2 emissions, by generating our electricity by nuclear energy. And the third advantage is that once nuclear reactors are built, we've got free energy for Australia for a long, long time to go. So on that basis, I think the advantages far outweigh the disadvantages. So I support nuclear energy. Lots of advantages. My opinion, I think Australia should embrace and get nuclear energy on board as soon as possible. Now, please understand, nothing that I've said today is my true opinion. I'm just illustrating the pros and cons. And the good thing with the pros and cons, you may not know whether you support something or not, whether you're going to recommend for it or whether you're going to recommend against it. And by doing the pros and cons, you're actually thinking on your feet. And as you're listing the advantages and the disadvantages, at some stage the scales are going to tip one way. You're going to say, aha, nuclear energy is far too risky. Aha, nuclear energy seems like a really good idea. Bearing in mind, you're not going to be asked about nuclear energy, your own area of expertise. You've been asked a question, you've got a bit of knowledge, but you've never been asked this question before. You're now thinking on your feet using pros and cons. 3 things. This is a great model when you've got too much stuff to say. 10 reasons why I don't support nuclear energy. 9 reasons why I think the NDIS is a poor use of taxpayers' money. Do you understand that 10 things or 9 things is too much? The 3 things hold you sharp, hold you tight, hold you to a short off-the-cuff response. So 3 things I want to say, 3 reasons why I support nuclear energy. Number 1, it's greenhouse gas friendly. Number 2, the uranium's in our backyard, it's ready to use, it's easy to extract. And number 3, once we construct those nuclear reactors, our electricity is basically free for the whole nation. Have a grid of nuclear reactors and then it's free. 3 reasons I don't support nuclear energy. Number 1, they can't guarantee its safety. Number 2, the waste product plutonium really worries me. Number 3, if it falls into the wrong hands, that becomes nuclear weapons, nuclear tipped bullets, plutonium tipped bullets. So lots of reasons, but there's 3 reasons I don't support nuclear energy. 3 things: keeps you tight and stops you going on and becoming too verbose. Remember, most off-the-cuff responses, most speaking off the cuff, most impromptu responses should be short. Self-Others Global, this is a great model for looking at something you know from different perspectives. And if you just answer from yourself without looking at the perspective of what other people or maybe your organisation, then you will miss some of the information and maybe answer from a personal point of view rather than a what's best for the organisation. There's that saying, we can't see the forest for the trees. And sometimes we can't see the answer in the information we know because we're coming purely from our perspective. So nuclear energy, well, personally, I really don't care. I don't care. I've got solar panels. Electricity prices can go up. I'm not going to be on this planet for that much longer. I really don't care. In terms of, I've got 3 adult children and grandchildren. I would want them to have a good life moving forward as well. So that worries me a little bit. In terms of what's good for the planet, yeah, I think nuclear energy will reduce our carbon footprint. Nuclear energy will reduce our CO2 footprint. Nuclear energy, once set up, means that electricity to the grid will flow seamlessly. So while I don't care, I think for the nation of Australia, nuclear energy is a good idea. So I'm looking at the bigger picture. Problem, cause, solution. Once again, you look at the problem, cause, and solution. So what do I think about a mining tax? Julia Gillard, previous Prime Minister, proposed a mining tax on our resources, and she wanted it to increase your superannuation co-contribution from 9% to 12%. How is she going to fund that? Let's tax the mining sector. So, wrong example. So I'm working for you and I come to you and I say, we've got a problem out there. We've run out of A4 photocopy paper, and those reports that you want done by the end of the day, I'm unable to do them. I'm sorry. I'm going to leave that with you and I'm off home. Now, if you're my boss, you're not going to enjoy that response very much. So let's go the other way. So there's a problem that I just want to report to you. We've run out of A4 photocopy paper, and those reports you wanted me to print this afternoon, they're going to be quite difficult. The cause is we had to print a lot of reports because Peter ran a workshop last week and it used all our paper. I've been on the phone to Officeworks, and they can have 5 reams of paper delivered within the next 30 minutes, so I can print those reports for you if that's okay with you. Problem, cause, solution. At the moment, especially over East, Australia is struggling to have continuity of electricity supply. And the problem is there's not enough oil and gas in the system. We're shutting down coal-fired power systems, and renewables aren't reliable. Sun shines during the day, but that base load overnight. So that's the problem. The solution, in my view, is if we create nuclear reactors, then they're going to go all day, all night, and there will be continuity of supply. No business, no home will have to worry about conserving energy. Will the power go out? Will you lose your freezer full of food? So the problem is renewables are not that good. The solution is let's use nuclear energy. Problem, cause, solution. And the last one, situation, action, outcome. This is good for job interviews. Can you give me an example of when you've used your interpersonal skills to resolve conflict? The situation was I had 2 people fighting. The action that I took as the manager was I got them aside. I went through the code of conduct. I went through the code of ethics. I retrained them on how to behave towards other people. I then got them together and got an agreement between them to act in compliance with these new rules so that they would treat each other with respect. And the outcome is 6 months later, I've had no further conflict. I've had no further complaints. Good job interview question, situation, action, outcome. Now, you can find other models. if you Google thinking and speaking off the cuff models, if you Google impromptu speaking models, there are other models. What I'm saying to you is to be good at thinking and speaking off the cuff, to be good at impromptu speaking, have those safety nets, those 3 or 4 models that you can go to when you're put on the spot. For me, pros and cons, I can form an opinion on most things when it comes to pros and cons. The advantages, the disadvantages. If I've got some knowledge, I can verbally unpack. I also like past, present, future, because the past, as I go back, okay, how were things? What's happening now? What do we need in the future? That helps me think on my feet before giving it an answer. So which models work for you? Which models do you feel you can use the next time you are put on the spot? Now, to get good at off-the-cuff speaking, impromptu speaking, make sure you practice. Practice impromptu speaking situations. Get people to throw you questions. Do job interview practice, mock job interviews, and get feedback on your responses. When you think you've done a great response, and people might say, well, hang on, you've forgotten this, or I think you're missing the point, or you're putting yourself at the center. So as they say, practice makes perfect, and practice makes you more spontaneous, which is what off-the-cuff speaking is. In summary, impromptu speaking, the ability to speak off the cuff, is seen as a leadership skill. It helps you be positioned as a go-to person, someone that's always got valuable insights. Something to say, a really good skill to have. And once again, I mentioned the word skill. So don't think that it's a natural ability to speak off the cuff. Many people have done the work. They've learnt the models. They've practiced. Use those 8 models. Which of those 3, maybe 4, resonate with you? And you can build as a safety net the next time you're thrown in the deep end, put on the spot. What do you think about nuclear energy? Ooh, haven't been asked that question before. And remember, practice makes you perfect. Practice makes you spontaneous. What have I got coming up? In Perth tomorrow, thinking and speaking off the cuff. I mentioned this is a 1-day workshop. We even go deeper than this. Port Hedland, effective presentation skills, winning presentation skills. This is the prepared presentation. You know you've got something coming up. And another off-the-cuff speaking in Port Hedland as well. But for you who like the webinars, I've got how to craft your stories. Storytelling is really important, and that is on the 5th of June. 30-minute free webinar on the 5th of June. If you're interested, please feel to register and come along. I do record them, so if you can't come along but you're interested, still register. You know how to contact me. If I can help you in any way, send me an email, phone call, contact me. So, thinking and speaking off the cuff. It's a wonderful skill to have, and the skill is the main thing. So those models I've been able to incorporate. So when I'm asked a question, when I'm asked to comment, when I do any media or radio, I've got those models. And one of the things that I always do is, that's an interesting question. That reminds me of, so if I understand you correctly, you want to know my opinion of the future of nuclear energy in Australia. Just those 5 to 10 seconds that enable me to work out which model is going to work best, what information I'm going to use. This is Peter Dew, public speaking trainer and coach.